The mud is thigh-deep, a thick, sucking paste that clings to the skin like a living entity. It is the monsoon season of the late 8th century, and the sky over the Kedu Plain is a bruised, violent purple. A solitary Javanese green magpie calls out from the dense canopy of banyan trees, a brief, beautiful melody that cuts through the oppressive humidity. For a fraction of a second, a young laborer named Kavi pauses, leaning his exhausted body against the rough hemp rope, listening to the bird, remembering the quiet village he left behind. Then, the illusion of peace is shattered. A sound like a dry thigh bone snapping in half echoes across the rain-slicked slope of the Bukit Hill. The colossal block of dark gray volcanic andesite, weighing well over 2 tons, suddenly shudders. 200 men, their bodies stripped to the waist, their muscles screaming in agony, desperately dig their bare feet into the sliding red earth. But the rope has snapped. The stone begins to slide backward. Men scream, an agonizing chorus of sheer panic, scrambling over one another to escape the crushing, merciless weight. Several are not fast enough. The stone grinds over them, a sickening, wet crunch, swallowed instantly by a booming peal of thunder. High above this carnage, cutting through the torrential downpour, the jagged, smoking peak of Mount Merapi glows with the dull, angry red of churning magma, a silent, monstrous witness to the slaughter. Why are they doing this? What incomprehensible force, what terrifying madness drives an entire generation of humans to drag 2 million blocks of rock out of raging, crocodile-infested rivers and haul them up a jungle hill, knowing it will cost them their blood, their broken bones, and their very lives? Are they building a fortress against the wrathful gods of the volcanoes, or are they attempting to construct a stairway to escape a doomed, impermanent world? The answer lies buried in the heart of the deepest jungle on the island of Java, within a structure so massive, so mathematically perfect, and so philosophically profound that it defies the limits of ancient human engineering. This is not merely the story of a building. This is the story of an obsession, a multi-generational, blood-soaked, mathematically precise obsession to carve the entire cosmos into a single mountain of stone. To understand the genesis of this architectural titan, we must plunge back into the volatile political and geological landscape of the 8th century. The island of Java is a place born of fire and destruction. It sits directly atop the most volatile section of the Pacific Ring of Fire, a tectonic battleground where the Indo-Australian plate constantly grinds beneath the Eurasian plate. This ceaseless geological violence has birthed a spine of hyperactive volcanoes running down the center of the island. Yet this same destructive force is the source of Java's unparalleled fertility. The volcanic ash, rich in minerals, turns the soil into a verdant, hyper-productive paradise. In the heart of this island lies the Kedu Plain, nestled between the imposing twin peaks of Sumbing and Sindoro to the northwest, and Merbabu and Merapi to the northeast. This incredibly fertile basin was the cradle of ancient Javanese civilization, a place where rice grew in such abundance that it fueled the rise of massive, ambitious empires. During this era, Java was a fractured, shifting mosaic of competing kingdoms. The most prominent power struggle was between the Sanjaya dynasty, who were fiercely devoted to the Hindu god Shiva and were actively erecting towering, sharp-edged temples to honor the destroyer deity, and the newly emergent, enigmatic Shailendras. The Shailendras are ghosts in the historical record. Their very name translates from Sanskrit as the Lords of the Mountain. They seemingly appeared out of the maritime mists, deeply connected to the sprawling, wealthy Srivijaya Empire based in Sumatra, which controlled the vital sea trade routes through the Strait of Malacca. The Shailendras were not Hindus, they were fervent followers of Mahayana Buddhism, and they were driven by a profound, almost terrifying psychological need to assert their dominance not just through military conquest alone, but through unparalleled, mind-bending architectural supremacy. King Samaratunga and his predecessors like King Dharanindra looked out over the Kedu Plain and saw the sharp, aggressive Hindu temples piercing the sky, and they decided to build something that would eclipse them all. Not just a temple, but a literal, physical manifestation of the Mahayana Buddhist path to enlightenment. They would build a mandala. A mandala is a spiritual and ritual symbol in Asian cultures, representing the universe. It is a cosmic diagram, usually drawn in colored sand by monks over days or weeks, only to be swept away to symbolize impermanence. But the lords of the mountain did not want impermanence. They wanted eternity. They wanted a three-dimensional mandala built of unbreakable volcanic rock that a pilgrim could physically walk upon, ascending from the hellish realm of human desire up to the formless void of ultimate nirvana. To achieve this impossible dream, they needed a visionary. Local legends speak of an architect named Gunadharma. History has erased his true face, but his mind remains stamped upon every inch of Borobudur. Gunadharma was not merely a builder, he was a master of the Shilpa Shastras, the ancient Indian manuals of architecture, geometry, and sacred proportions. Imagine a man who looked at an overgrown, irregular hill of dirt and saw the exact dimensions of the cosmos. Gunadharma's obsession with mathematics bordered on the divine. He utilized a unit of measurement known as the tala, defined as the length of a human face from the hairline to the tip of the chin, or the distance from the tip of the thumb to the tip of the middle finger when both are stretched to their maximum. Using this deeply human metric, he calculated the proportions of the monument with terrifying precision. The ratio of the base, the galleries, and the summit terraces was mapped to the golden ratio, creating an almost hypnotic, fractal symmetry. But a vision of this magnitude required a material capable of withstanding the relentless assaults of tropical monsoons, choking jungle vegetation, and the constant, vibrating tremors of the nearby volcanoes. They chose andesite. Andesite is an extrusive, igneous, volcanic rock. It is incredibly dense, heavy, and notoriously difficult to cut without modern steel or diamond-tipped tools. The laborers of the 8th century had only iron chisels, wooden mallets, and the brutal, unforgiving force of human muscle. The logistics of the quarrying process alone boggle the modern mind. There were no paved roads, no wheeled carts capable of bearing such weight in the deep mud, and certainly no hydraulic cranes. The stone had to be harvested from the riverbeds of the Progo and Elo rivers, where millennia of volcanic eruptions had deposited massive boulders. Picture thousands of men standing chest-deep in rushing, muddy water, carefully driving wooden wedges into natural fissures in the stone. They would then pour water over the wooden wedges. As the wood absorbed the water, it expanded with incredible, slow, unstoppable force, eventually cracking the massive boulders into manageable blocks. These blocks, roughly shaped, then had to be transported to the building site. For this, the Shailendras utilized teams of trained elephants, but primarily they relied on human beasts of burden. Bamboo rafts were constructed to float the stones downriver when possible, but the final ascent to the Bukit Hill was an agonizing, bloody affair of logs used as rollers, thick ropes, and sheer, brutal pushing. It is estimated that over 2 million individual blocks of stone, totaling 55,000 cubic meters, were dragged to the site. The sheer volume of calories required to feed this army of laborers meant that the surrounding agricultural infrastructure had to be perfectly tuned. Entire villages existed solely to grow rice for the stone haulers. It was an entire society mobilized for a single, colossal artistic endeavor. Once the stone reached the site, the true genius of Gunadarma's engineering was revealed. Because Java sits on a fault line, rigid mortar would instantly crack and shatter during an earthquake. Therefore, Borobudur was constructed completely without mortar. Every single one of the 2 million blocks of stone was meticulously hand-carved to interlock with its neighbors. The ancient Javanese stonemasons employed sophisticated joinery techniques usually reserved for woodworking. They used dovetail joints, where a flared tenon on one stone slides into a corresponding mortise on another. They used mortise and tenon joints and interlocking L-shaped blocks. This meant that the entire mountain of stone could shift, flex, and undulate during a seismic event without collapsing.
It was a massive, 2 million-piece, three-dimensional jigsaw puzzle, holding itself together purely by gravity and friction. As construction began, the massive base was laid out. Borobudur is structured strictly according to the Buddhist cosmology of the three realms. The first, lowest realm is the Kamadhatu, the sphere of desires, where humans are bound by their lusts, greeds, and base instincts. To represent this, the artisans began carving a series of 160 massive stone relief panels circling the base of the monument. These panels depicted the law of karma in brutal, unflinching detail. The carvers depicted murderers boiling in cauldrons, thieves being tortured, gluttons with bloated bellies, and men consumed by lust falling into demonic realms. It was a terrifying, visceral warning to the pilgrims. But then, a crisis struck, a crisis that nearly destroyed the entire project before it could rise. As the monument grew heavier, millions of tons of stone pressing down upon the natural dirt hill, the engineers noticed something horrifying. The base was shifting. The hill was settling unevenly. The colossal weight was causing the edges of the structure to splay outward, threatening a catastrophic, sliding collapse of the entire millions of tons structure. Panic must have gripped the court of the Shailendras. Decades of work, the lives of countless men, all on the verge of sliding into a pile of jagged rubble. The solution was drastic, brilliant, and heartbreaking. They decided to encase the entire carved base in a massive, thick retaining wall of solid, uncarved stone. This massive extra belt of rock added the necessary structural integrity to hold the hill together and prevent the sliding. But it meant that the 160 magnificent, terrifying panels of the Kamadhatu, the panels detailing the law of karma, were completely covered up, hidden in permanent darkness, never to be seen by the pilgrims. Some modern scholars argue this was not merely an engineering fix, but an act of religious censorship, suggesting the monks found the explicit depictions of lust and murder too distracting for a holy site. Whatever the reason, the secret base remained hidden in the dark for over 1,000 years, a buried gallery of human sin supporting a stairway to heaven. With the base stabilized, the builders pushed upward into the Rupadhatu, the sphere of forms. Here, the monument transforms into a sprawling labyrinth of square, walled galleries. The pilgrim is meant to walk in a clockwise direction, a practice known as pradakshina, slowly ascending through the terraces.
The walls of these galleries are not blank stone. They are the most extensive, detailed, and beautiful continuous stone tapestries in the ancient world. There are 1,460 narrative relief panels and over 1,000 decorative panels. If you were to lay them end to end, they would stretch for miles. The carving of these panels is where the true artistic soul of Borobudur lies. Imagine an artisan sitting cross-legged on the hot stone, the blazing tropical sun beating down upon his back. He holds a simple, heavy iron chisel in one hand, a wooden mallet in the other. He is tasked with carving the Lalita Vistara, the life story of Siddhartha Gautama, the historical Buddha. The artisan does not just carve a figure, he breathes life into the dense volcanic rock. He sculpts the intricate folds of Queen Maya's royal garments as she travels to Lumbini to give birth. He perfectly captures the anatomy of a charging war elephant, the delicate leaves of a Bodhi tree, the expressions of joy, sorrow, and ultimate serenity. The level of detail is microscopic. We can see the exact rigging of 8th century Javanese outrigger ships, the specific types of musical instruments played in the royal courts, the distinct architectural styles of the wooden palaces that have long since rotted away. The stone carvers of Borobudur inadvertently created the most comprehensive visual encyclopedia of ancient Javanese life that exists. But these were not merely historical records, they were spiritual instruction manuals. As the pilgrim walks higher, they encounter the Jataka tales, the stories of the Buddha's previous lives, where he incarnated as a noble deer, a compassionate monkey, or a self-sacrificing prince, constantly demonstrating the virtues of giving, patience, and morality. The artisan chiseling the Monkey King, sacrificing his own body to form a bridge for his subjects to escape a hunter, must have felt the weight of that moral lesson vibrating up through the handle of his mallet. Higher still, the narrative shifts to the Gandaviyu Sutra, the epic mind-bending story of Sudana, a young merchant's son who travels across the universe seeking ultimate wisdom, meeting a series of 53 teachers, including gods, merchants, monks, and finally the Bodhisattva Samantabhadra. The sheer scale of the labor here is difficult to process. Decades passed, generations of carvers lived, worked, went blind from the stone dust, and died upon these terraces. Fathers passed their chisels to their sons. The constant chip, chip, chip of iron on andesite was the heartbeat of the Kedu Plain for over 70 years. But as the pilgrim ascends through these claustrophobic, richly decorated corridors, their vision restricted to the stone walls and the open sky above, they are being psychologically prepared for the ultimate architectural shock. As they climb the final, narrow stone staircase from the square galleries of the Rupadhatu, they suddenly emerge into the blinding, open light of the Arupadhatu, the sphere of formlessness. Instantly, the claustrophobic walls vanish. The endless, busy carvings of humans, demons, and animals completely disappear. The pilgrim finds themselves standing on a vast, open, circular expanse with an unobstructed 360-degree view of the sweeping volcanoes and the deep green jungle below. The transition is violent in its serenity. Here, there are no square edges. There are 3 concentric circular terraces, and upon them sit 72 hollow bell-shaped stupas. Unlike the solid stone below, these stupas are perforated, pierced with diamond and square-shaped holes.
And inside each of these 72 stone cages sits a life-sized, perfect statue of a meditating Buddha. The symbolism is profound. The Buddha is there, yet partially hidden by the stone lattice, representing the transition from physical form to the ethereal void. The pilgrim walks among these silent, towering stone bells, the wind whistling through the perforations, an acoustic design that mimics the sound of absolute emptiness. And at the very center, at the absolute apex of the mandala, sits the main stupa. It is massive, monolithic, and completely closed. It is not perforated. It is the largest single structure on the monument. When Dutch explorers finally cracked it open in the 19th century, they expected to find a treasure, a relic, perhaps a golden statue. They found absolutely nothing. It was completely empty, and that was exactly the point. The ultimate destination of the Mahayana Buddhist path is sunyata, emptiness, the void, the realization that all phenomena are devoid of intrinsic, independent existence. The Shailendra kings and their brilliant architect Gunadharma had spent 70 years, millions of tons of stone, and the blood of an empire to build a stairway to absolute nothingness. The consecration of Borobudur must have been a spectacle of unimaginable grandeur. Picture thousands of monks robed in saffron, their chanting vibrating through the interlocking stones, the heavy scent of sandalwood incense masking the metallic smell of volcanic rock. The Shailendra king, seated upon a palanquin of gold, ascending the stone mountain, establishing himself as the universal monarch, the Chakravartin, turning the wheel of Dharma upon the earth. But this triumph of human will was incredibly fragile. The very forces that birthed the stone of Borobudur would soon conspire to erase it. Around the year 1000 CE, roughly 2 centuries after its completion, Mount Merapi violently awoke. The eruption was cataclysmic. A colossal plume of superheated ash and pumice shot into the stratosphere, blocking out the sun. The sky rained gray death over the Kedu Plain. The thriving agricultural villages, the wooden palaces of the Shailendras, and the vast, perfect mandala of Borobudur were buried under meters of volcanic ash. Simultaneously, a mysterious political shift occurred. The center of power on Java abruptly moved from the center to the east. The reasons remain hotly debated by historians. Was it the volcanic devastation? Was it an outbreak of disease? Or was it a devastating military defeat at the hands of the rival Srivijaya Empire? Whatever the cause, the Kedu Plain was abandoned. The bustling center of the Javanese universe went completely silent. And then the jungle went to work. With the priests and the caretakers gone, there was no one to clear the rapidly growing vegetation. Seeds of banyan trees and strangler figs, dropped by birds into the crevices of the intricate stone joints, quickly germinated in the rich volcanic ash. Their roots, acting like slow-motion crowbars, snaked deep into the masonry, seeking moisture. The very interlocking joints that had protected the monument from earthquakes were now being pried apart by the relentless, silent force of biology. Within a few centuries, the greatest monument in the southern hemisphere completely vanished from human sight. It became nothing more than a strange, artificially symmetrical hill, completely swallowed by dense, impenetrable rainforest. Local folklore eventually transformed the buried structure into a place of dark magic and bad luck. Tales were whispered of a prince who defied the local taboos to visit the ruined hill, only to fall ill and die vomiting blood shortly after. The mountain of stone became a mountain of ghosts. It slumbered in the humid darkness for centuries, the exquisite carvings of the Buddha's compassion slowly being eaten away by acidic moss, the perfectly aligned faces of the statues blindfolded by thick, creeping vines. The massive, empty stupa at the summit stood like a silent sentinel above the canopy, waiting for a world that had forgotten its very existence to return. It wasn't until the early 19th century, when the island fell under temporary British administration during the Napoleonic Wars, that rumors of a ruined mountain of statues reached the ears of Sir Thomas Stamford Raffles.
Driven by an insatiable imperial curiosity, he dispatched a Dutch engineer named H.C. Cornelius, along with 200 native laborers, to hack away the jungle. What they found, as they chopped through the centuries of roots and shoveled away tons of volcanic dirt, was a revelation that shocked the archaeological world. As the giant stone heads of the Buddhas emerged from the earth, their serene, half-closed eyes catching the sunlight for the first time in a millennium, the true, terrifying scale of what the Shailendras had accomplished was finally revealed. Borobudur was not just a ruin, it was a miraculous survivor. Despite earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, terrorist bombings in the modern era, and the relentless crushing weight of time, the interlocking stones of Gunadarma's masterpiece held firm. Today, as the sun rises over the Kedu Plain, burning off the thick morning mist, the silhouette of Borobudur looks exactly as it did over 1,000 years ago. A colossal, dark gray mountain of mathematically perfect volcanic stone, rising defiantly against the wild, chaotic jungle and the smoking, ever-threatening peak of Mount Merapi. It stands as a chilling, awe-inspiring testament to what human beings are capable of when they are driven by a singular, obsessive vision. It proves that with enough blood, enough sweat, and enough visionary madness, humanity can indeed carve its beliefs into the very bones of the earth, leaving a legacy in stone that outlasts empires, survives the wrath of volcanoes, and touches the eternal, formless void.